Hello and welcome back to another edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Happy Friday, everybody. Made it through another week. It's going to be Memorial Day weekend, and it'll be a good one. We got a good show for you today, though. First, going to talk about the breaking story coming out of the college football world, straight seeding for the college football playoff. What's that going to mean? We're going to dive into it. Also, we're going to get into Big Ten rankings today. That's going to be at the end of the show. Stick around. We're going to talk about the bottom of the conference first, go from there. We're also going to discuss the Elite 11 today, the premier quarterback competition for high school recruits, prospects. This is a big deal. The rosters got finalized. We're going to break down some of those guys that are going to be at the Elite 11. But first, before I get into anything else, I want to remind everybody, this show is all about you. We want to hear your comments, your questions, your insights. We want to make it as interactive, as exciting as possible. Now, one easy way to do that, if you're on YouTube, you can use the Super Chat feature. To use the Super Chat feature, all you have to do is click the $ at the bottom of the chat box, type in your message there, send that in, and this guarantees that your message gets on the air, gets read live. It's also just a great way to support our channel, support what we're trying to build here at GSMC. We couldn't do what we do without your ongoing support, and we're so grateful to have you all here as a part of our community at the GSMC Podcast Network. If you're not on YouTube, if Super Chat's not your thing, you can also go to gsmcpodcast.net to comment, leave a question there, or tip or donate. Again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. Now, let's get into the big story of the past 24 hours, I'd say. This actually broke when I was live yesterday, so did a little bit of a preview on it. But college football playoff leaders, the executives, the decision makers, the big guys, they all decided unanimously to move to a straight seeding model for this year's 12-team college football playoff format. This is a big deal. It's going to reward the committee's top 4 ranked teams with byes rather than the 4 highest ranked conference champions. The 10 FBS commissioners of all the athletic conferences, as well as Notre Dame athletic director Pete Bavacqua, they all unanimously agreed to this on Thursday afternoon during a call. Last year, obviously, this was not the case. The 4 byes, those went to the 4 highest ranked conference champions, regardless of where they were ranked. So now, Notre Dame here, one of the big winners. As an independent, they are now eligible to get a top 4 seed if they're ranked in the committee's top 4. Previously, this was not the case. The highest they could get was the 5th overall seed in the college football playoff. But now, that's not going to happen. If they're in the top 4, they get a bye. So, it is interesting to note that last year, all 4 teams that got a bye lost in their first matchup in the college football playoff. Whether that was a case of just being off for too long, they haven't played football in about a month, or a case of just interesting matchups, whatever it was, all 4 teams that got a bye actually lost last year. So was the bye really worth it? That's a conversation for another day, but it's still no question an advantage to get your team healthy, to have time to prepare, game plan for a long college football playoff run to win the championship. Last year, Ohio State had to win 4 games. Getting that bye, you only have to win 3, but still, that's another month of football that you previously did not have in the college football playoff, in the college football season, really. You played your 12 regular season games, maybe you have a bowl game, but it wasn't going through a 3-4 game gauntlet. It's a completely different beast, completely different animal. So having that bye, it's a big advantage just for getting your team right, getting healthy, having a couple weeks off. You get to prepare more intensely for your potential opponents. It's a big deal. An interesting thing that I thought here was the group agreed to maintain the $8 million financial commitment to the 4 highest ranked conference champions. They got $4 million for reaching the playoff, so for winning their conference essentially, and $4 million for reaching the quarterfinals. So that was just kind of the commissioner's way of at least for this year, holding to that commitment that they made financially to those institutions, such as Boise State, Arizona State, two teams that received that chunk for winning their conference, for getting to that round, that quarterfinal round of the college football playoffs. Last year, if you look at it, Boise State, Arizona State both earned top 4 seeds and a first-round bye as 2 of the 4 highest-ranked conference champions. Boise State, they were ranked 9th, however, in the committee's actual rankings, but they were seeded 3rd. Arizona State ranked 12th in the committee's rankings, but they get the 4 seed in that final bye. If we had gone to this last year, it would have been Oregon 1, Georgia 2, Texas 3, Penn State 4. Those would have been the top 4 teams. Those would have been the 4 teams that would have got the bye. And this has been something that has been contemplated as a change for months now, especially after we saw kind of how the initial 12-team playoff played out and those first-round matchups, and then kind of what happened in the second round too, where Oregon, Georgia, they both kind of had rougher matchups than they probably would have if they had straight seeding opponents. This had been something that had been really a top discussion of change for this upcoming year. And there's kind of overwhelming support for this. Pretty much everybody wanted to go to straight seeding. However, some commissioners, they were kind of hoping to tie it into the bigger conversation of just how the format's going to lay out in 2026 and beyond. We don't know. We have no idea. That's another thing worth noting is this is the last year that we actually know what the college football playoff is going to look like. There's nothing set in stone past 2025. 2026 could look completely different. It could be 16 teams. It could be 14 teams. It could still be 12. We don't really know. But it's probably not going to look the same, realistically. So at least for this year, this is how it's going to shake out. Obviously, no decisions were made on this call about the future format. It was strictly about 2025 and this kind of straight seeding change. There's still a whole lot of discussion. The commissioners are really trying to put everything on the table right now so that everyone kind of knows where each other's coming from. But there's obviously still a lot of discussions ongoing about what's going to happen to the future of the college football playoff. I want to look at, too, if last year was straight seeding, just to kind of give a comparison of how it might have shaken out a little differently. So the first round then, it would have been number 12 Clemson at number 5 Notre Dame. Rather than Notre Dame playing Indiana in the first round, they play a Clemson team that just barely snuck in to the college football playoff. Then Arizona's the 11th seed. They have to go to Ohio State. That's an intriguing matchup. And then a big winner here is Tennessee. Tennessee, rather than having to go to Columbus to play a road matchup against Ohio State in a primetime slot, they get a home game then. And they get SMU at home in Knoxville. And then Indiana, they also get a home game instead, as they're the 8 seed instead of the 10 seed in this straight seeding format. They get a home game against Boise State. If you look at the actual first round last year, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Penn State, Texas were the 4 home teams. They were all projected as favorites by over a touchdown in each of those matchups, and they would all probably win, again, the home teams here. So if you go with that, then you have Notre Dame winning, Ohio State winning, Tennessee gets past the first round. They win a home matchup against SMU. And then Indiana, Boise State. Both of those teams lost their first game in the college football playoff. One of those teams advances on. I'm just going to go with what happened in the regular season. We're going to say the home team wins, Indiana wins. So then going from there, the Rose Bowl, number 1 seeded Oregon now gets to play number 8 Indiana. They no longer have to play Ohio State. They get to play Indiana then. Penn State, Notre Dame. Yes, we saw that matchup in the semifinal, but now it's a quarterfinal matchup. It's in the Fiesta Bowl in Glendale. Same thing with Texas, Ohio State. We saw that as a semifinal matchup, but this is now the Sugar Bowl matchup in the quarterfinal. And then Georgia plays Tennessee in the Peach Bowl. So obviously we got 2 of those 4 matchups in real life, but they both happened in the semifinal, not the quarterfinal. And then if you take these games, Indiana probably wins. Oregon probably beats Indiana in the Rose Bowl. They probably win, advance. Penn State, Notre Dame, we're just going to go with The winner of that matchup was Notre Dame. So that's how it played out in real life last year, so we're going to go with that. Texas, Ohio State, same thing. Ohio State won that one. It was a close matchup, but we're going to go with what happened in 2024. And then Georgia, Tennessee. That's an interesting one, but I think Georgia wins that. So then your semifinals, you get Oregon, Notre Dame in the Cotton Bowl, and Georgia, Ohio State in the Orange Bowl. Now, I'm going to say Ohio State probably beats Georgia in the Orange Bowl, so they still get to the national championship. And I think Oregon might beat Notre Dame then in the semifinal. So then, instead of it being a quarterfinal matchup in Oregon, Ohio State, that is now your national championship. That makes a big difference for Oregon for that one seed. Instead of kind of being penalized for being the one seed, you now have a much more manageable path to the college football playoff to winning a championship. It's rewarding the regular season. It's rewarding your success throughout then. And one of the good things here, too, is the 5 seed isn't kind of as uniquely valuable now, right? We never got to see the original envision for the 12-team college football playoff format, as you know, it was normally 5 power conferences with a 6th at-large bid. That's not how it happened. The Pac-12 dissolved. Now there's 4 power conferences. That 5th is that at-large bid. And so it was kind of going to be interesting where the 5th seed with only the top 4 conference champions, they were really in a good spot strategically to where they could have gone on a run to the national championship. It just kind of how the bracket shook out. If everything went the way it should have, the 5th seed was really in an advantageous spot. That's no longer the case. With going to the straight seeding, the 5th seed, yes, it's still a really great spot to be in, but it didn't have that kind of innate advantage anymore that it previously kind of indicated from the way the format was. One of the bad things, though, are conference title games even going to mean anything? Because if you look at the top 4 seeds from last year, those were the 2 finalists in the SEC, the 2 finalists in the Big Ten. So at that point, it's basically both the winners and the losers of the SEC championship or the Big Ten championship are both getting a first-round bye. They're both getting into the playoffs in that scenario. The actual title game doesn't really mean anything. There's no inherent advantage. Now, yes, if you're not nearly as strongly ranked as Georgia was, as Penn State was, that's not going to happen every single year. But in years like 2024, there's really no advantage to winning the SEC championship. Besides, really, you just kind of want to avoid injuries. That Georgia losing Carson Beck in the SEC championship game, that's something that wouldn't really potentially happen down the road if both of these matchups are kind of in that prime time position for a top 4 seed for a bye. Why risk, getting some of your guys hurt in a game that doesn't really mean anything? Obviously, that's not going to be the case every year, but it's just kind of another thing to think about is how much does this devalue conference championships? So right now, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, we're switch gears. We're going to talk some high school football, talk some quarterbacks in the Elite 11, and what's going to go down there. But we're going to talk about all of that when we come back on the GSMC College Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. On this Friday, May 23rd, finally Memorial Day weekend, just touched a little bit on the college football playoff seeding switching. Going to straight seeding, what's it going to mean for the future? We're going to switch gears. We're going to talk a little bit about some high school quarterbacks now in the Elite 11 roster. But before I dive into that, I just want to quickly remind everybody that this show is all about you. We love hearing your comments, your questions, your insights, your opinions, your hot takes, whatever you got, we want to hear it. We want to make this show as interactive, as exciting as possible. Now, one way to kind of get your voice out there is if you're on YouTube, you can use the Super Chat feature. To use the Super Chat feature, all you have to do is click the $ at the bottom of the chat box, type in your message there, and send that in. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, gets read live, and it's also just a great way to support our channel, support what we're trying to build here at GSMC. Now, if you're not on YouTube, if Super Chat's not your thing, you can also go to gsmcpodcast.net to tip, comment, donate there. Again, that link for the website is gsmcpodcast.net. Now, let's dive into the Elite 11. So, the Elite 11, the rosters just came out for the quarterback competition. If you don't know, the Elite 11, it's probably the biggest circuit quarterback competition in the United States, I would say. This is a big-time deal. It's going to take place June 17th to 19th and in Manhattan, or at Manhattan Beach High School in California. This is headlined by a bunch of the top guys, 5-star quarterbacks. This always brings out the best of the best, and it's where they go one-on-one pretty much, showcasing their quarterback talents, showcasing who's the future. If you look at, this is a competition that has had multiple number 1 draft picks at the quarterback position, going back to Matthew Stafford, Andrew Luck, Jameis Winston, Jared Goff, Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence, Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, all Elite 11 quarterbacks. So this is a big competition. This is a big deal. And this kind of shows us who could be up next. So the rosters came out, and I kind of want to just highlight some of the guys that I saw on there, some of the big names, some of the under the radar guys too. First off, Faison Brandon, headliner, 24/7's number 1 overall prospect in 2026, number 1 quarterback, kid from Greensboro, North Carolina. This kid's a baller though. He just committed. He committed last year actually, but this is going to make Tennessee fans quickly forget about the whole Nico Iamaleava drama. This is a guy that earned Gatorade and Max Prep's Player of the Year in North Carolina as a junior last season, led his high school Grimsley to a 16-0 record for a state title, 77% completion percentage, 2,800 yards, 35 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. 35-2. That's a 17-1 touchdown to interception ratio. That's pretty incredible. Also, 625 yards on the ground, 9 rushing touchdowns as well. This kid's the total package, a big-time pickup for Tennessee, and a guy that pretty much checks off every box as a quarterback. Has the arm talent, has kind of the dual threat athleticism. Not a guy that's going to take off all the time, not a true scrambler, I would say, but a guy that when he needs to, he can make plays with his legs and is much more athletic than people give him credit for as a runner. Gonna light up scoreboards, just kind of has that arm strength, that athleticism to put up stats across the board. He's got a really sturdy base, passing-wise, super smooth release, and he just rips the ball all across the field. Hits different corners of the field easily, able to kind of level the ball. And at times it kind of jumps out of his hands as he hits his short, intermediate targets. That's going to be something he might need to work on, is his touch a little bit. But this is a guy that is a big quarterback prospect, a kid that's super exciting, should really kind of showcase his talents. And especially if he can showcase a little more of that touch in the shorter, intermediate kind of game, this could be a guy that very easily takes home award winners at the Elite 11. Another guy, Keyshawn Henderson. Now, Keyshawn Henderson, super interesting prospect for 2026. This is a guy that 24/7 has as their number 3 overall prospect in the class, number 2 quarterback, but he might not be a quarterback. This is a guy that when you look at him, he's got unique athleticism at the quarterback position. Super strong track and field data and raw numbers from testing there. Super kind of dangerous improvisational threat at quarterback, especially when he gets off schedule, kind of just able to make things happen just instinctively, just because of the kind of athlete he is. And he's a guy that also his feel for the quarterback position really took noticeable strides in 2024. This is a guy that can play a bunch of different positions across the field. One of the most intriguing prospects in the 2026 class, regardless of position. Other schools, other programs right now are trying to get him as an athlete. They don't want him as a quarterback. He's that dynamic as an athlete. And that's not just, Conference Sun Belt. It's not just Group of 5 teams that are trying to get him as an athlete. These are the Oregons, the Alabamas, the Georgias, the blue bloods of the sport. They want Keyshawn Henderson as an athlete, not as a quarterback. That just shows you how dynamic he is. And if he can kind of fine-tune that quarterback position, if he can fine-tune the mechanics, the actual physics of being a quarterback, not just being an athlete on the football field, this is a guy that has crazy high upside. And he didn't have bad passing stats last year. 66% of his passes completed, 2,700 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, and he led his high school legacy in Spring, Texas to a 7-4 record. But that's high school football outside of Houston. That's a tough place to win a lot of football games, even if you are a 5-star quarterback, a 5-star athlete. Keyshawn Henderson, though, can he kind of show that he's fine-tuned some of those passing mechanics? Can he show that he's taken another stride in his feel, in his touch, in his ability as a quarterback at the Elite 11? That's what we're going to be looking for out of Keyshawn Henderson for sure. Can he kind of fine-tune what makes him so special, what makes him so unique at that quarterback position? Another 5-star guy that we're looking at that's going to be there is Dia Bell, son of former NBA player Raja Bell. This is a kid that's number 24 overall for 24/7, number 5 quarterback, out of Plantation, Florida, plays for American Heritage, which is a really strong program out of Florida, and currently committed to Texas. After Arch Manning, look for Dia Bell to be the next guy up. 70% of his passes completed last year, 29 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. He's 6'2", 215, got really good size for the position, and also kind of adds a dual threat ability. We started to see this more and more out of high school quarterbacks coming in. They're able to use their legs. They're dynamic athletes. This is a guy in Dia Bell that ran for 560 rushing yards last year on 67 carries, 5 rushing touchdowns. So another guy that can use his legs when he needs to. And committed to Texas last year, June 17th of last year. So a hard Texas commit, a guy that's only visiting Texas moving forward. This is the guy that the Longhorns are really trying to build their 2026 class around. He's a crafty quarterback, really well-rounded game that's kind of shown year-to-year improvement. He's really calm, collected in the pocket, isn't going to flinch in the face of pressure, and he kind of uses his above average athleticism to extend plays, get out of the pocket, and just kind of make stuff happen when everything breaks down. Got a really smooth stroke, cleaner mechanics, and it allows him to kind of layer the football to the second, to the third levels of the football field. Really has plenty of touch on the deep shots. I think a lot of it's probably, honestly, from his father having the basketball background, having to put touch, different speeds on balls. That's something that you do a lot in basketball, and that's something that can translate when you're kind of taking that point guard approach of just distributing, getting it to your spot. That's something Dia Bell does really well. And the Elite 11 not having pressure in his face, that could really kind of showcase his talents of just being smooth, calm, collected. He doesn't need to worry about anybody in his face, so he can take his time and just kind of do his thing. Another guy that I think is going to be kind of interesting to watch is Jay Fetty, 4-star, and currently committed to Arizona State. Now, this is a kid that's the 5th highest quarterback recruit in Arizona State's modern recruiting era, which is since 2000. Really kind of raised his play last year. Goes to a high school outside of El Paso in Texas. 2,500 passing yards, 32 touchdowns, only 1 interception, really kind of showcasing his decision-making skills. Needs to work on his accuracy, though. Only completed 60% of his passes. So that's going to be something to watch for with Jake Fetty. And again, dual threat, 589 rushing yards on the ground, can extend plays when he needs to. This is a guy, though, fires the ball with really good velocity across multiple levels of the field, able to get it over the middle, to the perimeter, to the edges. Guy that has really dangerous playmaking, play extending ability when everything breaks down, when he's trying to evade pressure to find downfield targets, or just kind of bailing out his offense with scramble yardage. A guy that can make things happen when everything breaks down too. And he went to the Elite 11 Austin Regional. And when everybody was kind of evaluating him there, he really balled out there. He was exceptional. He earned Alpha Dog honors, that's basically the top quarterback there for that specific combine, I guess. Earned Alpha Dog honors from 24/7 Sports, really kind of showcasing what he could do. And also, he could be perhaps the most prolific prospect to come out of El Paso area pretty much in a long time, especially in the internet recruiting era. And that's a big area, 3.4 million people. This is a guy that's probably the best to come out of the El Paso area pretty much in the 21st century. That kind of showcases his talent. A couple under-the-radar guys got invitations. So, Matt Ponatoski, this is another guy, 37th ranked quarterback in the 24/7 recruiting. He's a 3-star quarterback. He's from Archbishop Moeller in Cincinnati, Ohio. Pretty big program there, Division I football. Has recently started to approach about 20 offers. Just got Oregon and Alabama. He's kind of started to rise up in rankings. He's 6'2", 190, also a 2-sport star. Has a lot of high major interest for baseball. Texas A&M actually offered him in January after he made his way to see Texas A&M to visit for baseball. They offered him for football. This is a kid, though, threw for 4,200 yards last year, 57 touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions. 57 touchdowns is unbelievable when you think about it. 70% of his passes completed as well in a really tough D1 Ohio Division football. That's a really tough conference. They play a really difficult schedule with a lot of D1 caliber opponents. That's pretty impressive. This is a kid that's been a riser. He could kind of showcase why he was invited to the Elite 11. Number 37 quarterback in the country. That's normally not a guy that's going to get invitations here, but he could show why he got invited. He's got a chance to kind of showcase what his skills are. A kid that I think is really intriguing as kind of a late riser in the cycle that's still uncommitted. So some of those schools that really might be looking at a quarterback, this could be a guy in Matt Ponatoski that they turn their attention to after the Elite 11. So right now, we're going to take our second break of the show. When we come back, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk a little bit about Group of 5, give a quick little preview, go around some of the conferences, give who I think could be the conference favorites, and kind of why. But we're going to discuss all of that when we come back on the GSMC College Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network on this Friday, May 23rd. Just touched a little bit about the Elite 11, some of the quarterbacks there, probably the biggest quarterback competition in the country, big deal. We're going to see a lot of big-time prospects from 2026. But right now, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk a little bit about the Group of Five. Give a quick little preview. We're not going to dive super in-depth into any of the specific conferences right now. Just going to kind of go around to some of the bigger Group of Five conferences and kind of discuss who could potentially be title favorites, who could potentially be one of those teams to get an at-large bid this upcoming year for the college football playoff. And so last year, it kind of felt like Boise State was just a cut above the rest of the Group 5. Just the way they were built in that race to land the Group of 5 playoff bid, it kind of seemed like they were just, it was destined that it was going to be Boise State. The talent that they had, obviously you have a player like Ashton Jeanty, unbelievable, one of the best players in college football history. That's going to help your team, obviously. But this year, you lose Ashton Jeanty. Yes, Boise State, they're still going to be up there. There's no question about it, but it's a lot more muddled. It's a lot more intriguing on who could potentially emerge from the Group of 5. American, Sun Belt, there's going to be a lot of potential threats here, right? Potential programs that could rise to the occasion. Mountain West, obviously there's Boise State. There's a couple other ones as well. And then, could there be a MAC team? I don't know. Maybe. It's possible. But when you look at the American, right, you have a couple favorites who are going to be at the top. So there's obviously going to be Memphis. Memphis coming off a disappointing 2024 season in which they really kind of pushed all their chips in. They had Seth Hannigan back for their last year, had a couple other guys that were in their last years of the eligibility in 2024. They still won 11 games, but they finished third in the American. Obviously kind of a disappointment then. I would still probably give them a slight edge right now. The job that Ryan Silverfield's done with Memphis, how consistent they've been during his tenure, I think they're going to bounce back this year and still be a really solid Group of 5 program. Then you have South Florida. South Florida's pretty intriguing. They are certainly have built up in the past few seasons. They could potentially be one of those top 2 or 3 teams in the Group of 5. Tulane. I think Tulane's going to be really intriguing. Yes, you lose Darian Mensah, your quarterback, goes to Duke. That's a big loss. But you have John Summerall there as the head coach. You have a couple other guys, solid weapons there. This is one of the most consistent Group of 5 teams. They're always pretty solid. I wouldn't count them out. So I think you're probably top 3 right now, I would say, are Memphis, South Florida, and Tulane. But then you have the service academies, kind of dark horses. Army really had a great season last year. Under Jeff Monk in the past 2 seasons, I would say, 2 or 3, they have really elevated the profile of Army football. Last season, ranked throughout the season multiple different times. They're going to be there again. Bryson Daly's back at quarterback. This is going to be another stingy, tough Army team to beat. And then Navy, too. Navy has had a couple of rough seasons the past few years, but they really started to build back up last year in 2024. They're looking for even more in 2025. Have some continuity coming back. The midshipmen, they're going to be interesting as well. I wouldn't count either of those 2 service academies out. I think Army's probably a safer bet right now, just given how well they've performed the past couple of seasons, as well as Jeff Monken's just a great head coach. One of the best head coaching jobs in the country, at one of the toughest jobs in the country. That's a guy that knows how to win. I wouldn't count him out. They're going to be a fun league, though. Obviously, there was a big exodus of talent in the transfer portal from the AAC, but a lot of programs kind of smartly capitalized on that by filling spots on the roster that they could and retaining a handful of key players. They were able to pick the guys that they could afford to keep, that they were like, okay, we need these one or two guys to remain on our program. It's going to be interesting, though. You could probably make a case for as many as 8 teams to win the AAC this year, to at least have an argument for winning the AAC. Conference USA, it's going to be an interesting year for Conference USA. 2 new teams coming in from FCS, Missouri State and Delaware. And both of those squads, they returned pretty much most of their rosters from last season as part of the transition up. But there's still kind of an unknown with each, obviously, as you jump up to tougher competition on a consistent basis, a regular basis. And then you got to deal with Conference USA's midweek games for the first time. You're obviously not having that at the FCS level. It's going to be interesting, though. I think Liberty's probably the favorite there right now. Western Kentucky, definitely a dark horse. And then Jacksonville State also going to be there, but losing Rich Rod, losing a lot of their bigger key players to West Virginia. They just left with Rich Rod. So they're still kind of there, Jacksonville State, but I wouldn't count them as high as Liberty or Western Kentucky right now, just for me. The MAC. It's Toledo's year, man. Go Rockets. It's going to be the Toledo's. Toledo's the favorite this year in the MAC. It's going to be an interesting year, though. There's 5 new head coaches joining the MAC. New school arriving in UMass. And then you have the pending departure of Northern Illinois, their last year in the MAC until they go to the Mountain West Conference in 2026. Obviously, transfer portal was not kind to the MAC. That's kind of just the way it goes. If you really perform well in the league, chances are you're not going to be there the next year anymore. And that's going to make for, a bunch of coin flip games always. The Miami OUs, the Eastern Michigan Ball States, those kind of matchups, they're going to be coin flips. Beyond Toledo. Toledo, if they kind of live up to expectations this year, they could be a sneaky option for that group of 5 bid. If they kind of run the table, this is a really talented Rockets team. If they actually live up to their billing, they could. They should run through the MAC. That's an undefeated season. And then they have an opener at Kentucky. That's really intriguing. If they're able to beat Kentucky, and then if they're able to run the gauntlet throughout the regular season, the Toledo Rockets could certainly be up there in the conversation for the group of 5 bid. If they go undefeated, if they have a win on the road at an SEC opponent, that's a really big marquee win for a group of 5 team that's not going to get as many opportunities just to play those high caliber programs. In the Mountain West, Boise State is still going to be your favorite here. Yes, Ashton Genty's gone, but you have Maddox Madison coming back. You have a lot of pieces from that defense returning. San Jose State, that's going to be kind of interesting. Obviously, they have a little continuity there. They could be kind of a dark horse. Air Force, maybe. And then Utah State upgraded head coach. UNLV, Dan Mullen experience. I don't really know what's going to happen there with that one, honestly. But that should be Boise's conference. There's a couple intriguing teams, though, I would say. The Sun Belt. Sun Belt's going to be a lot of fun. You probably have 5 or 6 programs that certainly have an argument. And they could have all of those teams probably be fringe top 25 teams at some point. Georgia Southern, James Madison, Arkansas State, App State, Coastal Carolina, Louisiana, maybe. Like, they're all potential. It's going to be interesting. I don't really know who's going to win the Sun Belt. There's a lot of depth here. There's a lot of programs that are kind of in that upper mid-tier that all certainly have an argument at some point. I think it's just going to kind of depend on how everything shakes out. There's a lot of new coaches, too, throughout the group of five. AAC, there's kind of a mixture of some coaches taking bigger jobs and then some coaches that are completely new to the table. It's going to be interesting. Conference USA, they kind of got a similar vibe going on. Longtime Florida A&M head coach Willie Simmons, he's now at Florida International. Former North Carolina Central head coach Jerry Mack left being a position coach to return to Kennesaw State, leading the program there. Longtime DC Charles Kelly took over for Rich Rod at Jacksonville State. Phil Longo taking his first head coaching job at Sam Houston State. In the MAC, 5 head coaches arrive, headlined by Eddie George, taking the job at Bowling Green after being at Tennessee State, leading them to the playoff last year in the FCS. And that's a pretty stable Bowling Green program, a guy that's an Ohio legend throughout the state for his achievements at Ohio State. Then you have a couple guys, Ball State, Central Michigan, UMass. Those all have new head coaches. And Mark Carney serving as the interim at Kent State after Kenny Burns was fired in 2025. It's all going to be interesting. Mountain West, you have ex-North Dakota State head coach Matt Entz, now at Fresno State. And then Jason Eck is taking over at New Mexico. Dan Mullen, obviously taking over for UNLV. And then Bronco Mendenhall, going back to head coaching, going to Utah State. And then Washington State also. I know they're not group of 5. They're kind of close. They replace Jake Decker with Jimmy Rogers, the FCS national title winning head coach with South Dakota State. Group of 5, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be really intriguing. I don't know who's going to get the bid. We're going to have to wait and see. Could it be Boise again? Certainly possible. Could it be Toledo? I don't know. I'm cheering for the Rockets this year, but we're going to have to just kind of see how it all shakes out. So right now, we're going to take another short break on the show. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about Vanderbilt and their new enterprises, what they're calling it. Enterprises. I like that word. But we're going to dive into that when we come back on the GSMC College Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Happy Friday, everybody. Today is May 23rd. We're at to the end of another long week, but we're going to keep going. We're going to talk a little bit now about Vanderbilt and kind of what they're doing with this new business venture that they've just announced. So, when Vanderbilt Chancellor Dan Diermeyer kind of explained this entire strategic venture on Wednesday, he used 2 examples. He said that Notre Dame's athletic director previously served as the chairman of NBC Sports, and then also the University of Kentucky recently became the first school to convert its athletic department to a limited liability holding company named Champions Blue LLC, which the school said it will allow it to find new revenue through public-private partnerships and potentially other transactions such as real estate. So those were the 2 examples that Vanderbilt Chancellor Dan Diermeyer gave on Wednesday in explaining Vanderbilt's creation of a strategic initiative called Vanderbilt Enterprises, with longtime hospitality industry leader Marcus Schreier hired as the CEO. And this is kind of something that they feel as a need. the professionalization of college sports, of college athletics, it's something that's going to continue and going to go well beyond the realm of athlete compensation. It's not just going to be about paying these players. It's going to dive into media, just a ton of different avenues, ventures this road will lead down is this increasing professionalization. And so Vandy's kind of the latest school, not the first, not the last, but the latest, to kind of take a creative approach with the creation of this Vanderbilt Enterprises strategic initiative. And Meyer, he said his real inspiration wasn't too far from where he was speaking Wednesday, which was in London. He hosted an event there for Vanderbilt donors across the pond, but he said he studied several professional sports franchises and some in the Premier League in England, including Manchester City. He said Manchester City built next to its stadium the second largest concert venue in the UK, the biggest one outside London. So you have concerts there and create a whole kind of weekend there for people before going to a Manchester City game. And then Meyer said of a complex that also holds a hotel, a museum, and a fan zone there in Manchester right next to their stadium. He said, well, we don't have to build a concert venue. We're in Nashville. We're in downtown Nashville. And he's right. This isn't the first time that a Vanderbilt official has mentioned the idea of trying to capitalize on the tourism that comes through Nashville, especially right now. It's so trendy, especially with young people, to take trips to Nashville, and kind of as an alternative to going to Las Vegas almost. It's been kind of this tourism haven that's really started to boom in the last 10, 15 years, I would say. But it just kind of bustles right outside the walls of Vanderbilt. The school's literally pretty much in downtown Nashville. They're right there. They're right next to this tourism haven, this lucrative multi-million-dollar kind of industry of tourism in this really nice, really trendy city to visit in the U.S. And so, but this is the first time, yes, this is the first time that they've kind of acknowledged, mentioned the idea. This is the first time that they're actually doing something about it. This is the first time that those words of, yeah, we're right next to this, why don't we capitalize it? They're actually being accompanied by an actual strategy and investment, capital funds. The idea here, Meyer said, is for Vanderbilt Athletics to be part of the equation for the tourists coming to Nashville. And for visitors who are in town for business conferences, for young families, young professionals who aren't necessarily alums or longtime fans of Vanderbilt, but are in the Nashville area. They want Vanderbilt Athletics to become a part of that equation. Right now, you have the Predators, you have the Titans, but there's no NBA team, there's no MLB team, at least for right now. There's a big gap there that Vanderbilt sports could fill for Nashville tourism, for Nashville industry. And he was kind of saying, how does this translate into resources? How can you enhance the fan experience? If you run a hotel or a type of event venue or anything on the hospitality side, you want to create new experiences, new venues for people, just like they do at Disney or the Grand Ole Opry, which is right down the road. And this timing, it kind of relates to the upheaval of college athletics. Schools are preparing to share millions in revenue with athletes as this House settlement could come down. We're not sure. It still hasn't been approved yet. Key here, still has not been approved. It could be coming down any day. But this is something that Meyer himself, he compared to kind of the 70s airline industry boom. He said everybody's kind of got to get ready for the new world. You have to set aside all paradigms, and develop new ideas. So that's something that's what he's trying to do here, is prepare for this new professional world of college athletics. And it's really good timing, too. It also coincides with a Vanderbilt product that has really been strengthened on the field. They beat Alabama this past year. They stormed the goalpost down the streets of Broadway, threw it into the river. That didn't hurt, he said, and he acknowledged that whole kind of scenario, the greatest win in football in Vanderbilt history, that didn't hurt at all. That's going to really enhance the product, enhance eyeballs, bring more to Vanderbilt athletics. And so in the 5 years under Urban Meyer and athletic director Candace Lee, hundreds of millions of dollars have been raised for facilities to be transformed, for athletics here at Vanderbilt. They're renovating their football stadium. Yes, that's been a running joke for now. I don't even know how long, but that's a big time transformation that they're doing to their football stadium. And their most important teams have really gained momentum. Football is obviously king, especially in the SEC. And beating Alabama, winning a bowl game, that's huge. Both the men's and women's basketball teams made the NCAA tournament this year. Massive. And then baseball. Obviously, baseball that's what they're known for in terms of sports. If you know anything about Vanderbilt baseball, that's an outstanding program, consistently elite. If they can make a big run this year in college football and the college baseball World Series, that's a lot of positive forward momentum for Vanderbilt athletics. Candace Lee has been one of the 5 finalists for Athletics Director of the Year, and Danny White from Tennessee won the award this year. She also was named Athletic Director of the Year previously by the National Association of College Athletic Directors. So this is an AD that's respected throughout the industry, that knows what she's doing. And then kind of bringing in Marcus Schreier is really an interesting move. But if you look at what they're trying to talk about, the language of kind of what Vanderbilt's saying, it makes a lot of sense. This is a guy that is a hospitality guy, brings a lot of that experience, has more than 25 years of global experience in the hospitality industry, and he kind of specialized in brand development, innovation, and experience design across 40 countries, 20 luxury brands. He recently served as Chief Development Officer and Managing Director of Proper Hospitality, and has worked for Marriott before. This is a guy that knows how to build brands, knows how to be hospitable, how to incorporate that into different projects. That's really what Vanderbilt's trying to do. They want to bring kind of a hospitality element to Vandy Athletics. They want to build that brand, to build them up into something more than kind of what Vanderbilt has been known for in terms of athletics since I've been alive, pretty much. They want to bring respect, and they want to utilize the beautiful, booming city in Nashville that their university calls home. They want to utilize that for once, for finally, and take Nashville, take what you have, and use it to your advantage. And if Vanderbilt does, this could be a program, an athletics department in general, that really starts to thrive, starts to kind of generate and build momentum in the new era. It's very possible, and this business venture could just be the first step in that transformation of Vanderbilt athletics. But we're going to have to find out kind of how it all shakes out. Will this be something that actually really does anything for Vanderbilt? Will this new kind of strategic initiative fall through? Will it make any kind of impact for Vandy? We don't know yet, but the way they're talking about it, the way Dante Moore talking about it, Candace Lee, their vision, it's at least a plan, it's at least a step forward towards kind of some really positive momentum for Vanderbilt, for the future of their athletics. We're going to have to see how it all shakes out, but it's at least a really great first step. So right now, we're going to take our last break of the show. When we come back, we're going to start Big Ten rankings today. We're going to start the programs, start at the bottom, and work our way up. But we're going to dive into all of that when we come back on the GSMC College Football Podcast. Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Happy Friday, everybody. We're at the end of the show now. We're going to finish off by talking about the Big Ten. We're going to start our program rankings today, start at the bottom, and work our way up. Y'all know how this goes at this point, but we're going to start 18. Sorry, Boilermaker fans, but it's got to be Purdue. Purdue, the plus is things can't get much worse, right? 1-11 last year, 0-9 in Big Ten conference matchups. There's optimism, though. They do bring in a new coaching staff. You have Barry Odom undertaking a Herculean task in kind of revitalizing this Purdue program. Brand new coaching staff in charge. So there's at least some optimism there, right? But otherwise, I wouldn't have high expectations if I was a Boilermaker fan for 2025. The past few seasons, since Jeff Brom's departure, really haven't been a walk in the park for Purdue. Just kind of had a steep decline in terms of talent, in terms of on-the-field play. This was once kind of a sleeper team in the Big Ten. You know, they were always kind of plucky, big upsets before, had a really big one against Ohio State a few years back, but always kind of plucky under Jeff Brom, always kind of a sleeper. Unfortunately, that's not been the case the past few seasons under Ryan Walters, but you get in Barry Odom this year to kind of take over the program, have a more veteran head coach at the helm. Hopefully that kind of brings some improvement. Quarterback here, we don't really know. It could be Ryan Brown. He started 2 games for them last year, transferred actually in December to North Carolina, then transferred back once the spring portal opened. So could kind of potentially be in the running for the starting role there. It's him, Evans Chuba, Malachi Singleton, all kind of in competition. Nobody is particularly exciting out of that group. You do have Kendrick Breedlove coming back. That's a big plus. He was their interception leader last year, had 3 in 2024 after he kind of transferred in from Colorado, which he transferred there from Ole Miss. So kind of had multiple stops along the way, but had 3 picks last year, had 40 tackles, 4 pass breakups. So that's at least a plus on the defensive side of the ball, is you have a really solid cornerback coming back. Besides that, though, it's looking like it might be a rough year for Purdue, and that's why I have them ranked last. Certainly, they could surprise me, win a couple more games. I don't really see that happening at this point, though. 17, I think it's Maryland. Maryland's, they've really kind of been interesting under Mike Locksley. At points, they kind of seemed like they were on their way to becoming one of the mid-tier Big Ten teams who could at times punch above their weight class, especially when Talia Tagovailoa was there. Was a Big Ten passing leader in terms of career passing yards, actually. But something kind of went awry last year. They're going to be looking to bounce back this year. There's not a lot of hope on the horizon right now, though, for Maryland. Quarterback, again, is unsettled. You have Justin Martin, 4-star Malik Washington, kind of battling it out right now. The big thing there is their most experienced quarterback has only thrown 35 pass attempts in his collegiate career. So, not a lot there right now, at least in terms of experienced quarterback play. Certainly Malik Washington kind of showcased why he was a 4-star throughout moments in the spring, but even if he does start, that's a young freshman that's going to play on a struggling Maryland team. He's going to have some up and down moments for sure. You do bring in a couple really nice transfers. E.J. Moore coming in from Western Carolina. This is a guy that appeared in all 12 games for them last year, was an FCS All-American, as a freshman All-American according to Phil Steele last year in 2024. Had 18 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hurries, also recovered a fumble. And this was a guy that's young, had a really solid freshman year at Western Carolina, obviously stepping up in competition this year, going from the FCS to the Big Ten, but a guy that's got 3 years of eligibility, could really kind of grow into a role there on the defensive side of the ball for the Terrapins. Another kid that's intriguing that I thought when they brought in Jordan Scott. He's a 6'7" JUCO wide receiver. Was number 6 overall in ESPN's JUCO rankings. And according to 24/7, number 2 JUCO wide receiver in the country, number 12 overall JUCO player in the country. And JUCO rosters, man, there's some talent there. So this is a guy that's really intriguing. Spent the winter and spring semesters at Florida State and kind of re-entered the portal. Now he's at Maryland. The guy that had 20 catches last year, 350 yards, 4 touchdowns at Southwest Mississippi Community College, has 2 years of eligibility remaining. I just think he's intriguing as a 6'7" wideout on a team that really doesn't have a ton of top-level kind of skill possession guys that could make a difference. That's a guy that could potentially step into a role there for the Terrapins. There are some pluses on the schedule. You don't have Ohio State, Penn State, or Oregon. The teams that are on the slate, the ones that you kind of look at and think, Maryland could win that game, they all kind of seem to have surpassed the Terrapins at this point in the past couple of years, all seem to be more talented. They could certainly bounce back and be all right this year, or things could get worse. I think this is kind of a big tipping point season for Maryland and Mike Locksley, but we're going to see. Right now, I think they're at 17. At 16, I think it's Northwestern. Northwestern, again, they're going to be kind of plucky. They're an intriguing team. They were kind of the underdog pick in 2024 after going 8-5 in 2023, but last year couldn't reach those heightened expectations, went 4-8, and that's not something that they're going to look to repeat. Maryland's kind of one of those programs that every year it seems like it's a completely different result. They did bring in a really solid addition at quarterback in Preston Stone, former SMU starter, really had a solid 2023 year, lost his job to Kevin Jennings last year while SMU made their run to the college football playoff. But this is a guy that I think could really perform well at Northwestern. At the minimum, gives David Brown a really solid floor at quarterback that should lead the team to improvement in 2025. I think, though, Preston Stone going in a much more low-pressure situation at Northwestern compared to SMU, where, yes, SMU in 2023, they were not in the ACC, but they still had really high expectations as one of the better group of 5 programs. Northwestern, there's not going to be a lot of expectations here for Preston Stone. Could be a spot that he comes in and performs really well at. But right now, I just don't know if they have enough talent to kind of jump into the middle tier of the Big Ten. I think they're going to struggle again this upcoming year. And I just don't know if there's enough talent on the Northwestern Wildcats roster right now to compete with the rest of the league. Then at 15, I think it's going to be Michigan State. There were some pluses and some positive momentum during Jonathan Smith's first year at Michigan State. His players love to play for him, but it's going to take more than that to get Michigan State back up to the top of the Big Ten. And a lot of it is probably going to hinge on Aiden Childs, realistically. This kid that he needs to be their breakthrough player this year. Had an up and down year as a first-year starter, a guy that followed Jonathan Smith from Oregon State when he took the job, but a guy that's got a lot of potential as a dual-threat quarterback. Needs to show more consistency, needs to be more accurate in his passes, but has a lot of potential. If he can kind of play up to the high end of that, Michigan State can go where Aiden Childs takes them. I think their high end is probably a 7 or 8 win team, but if Aiden Childs performs really well, the ceiling of this Michigan State roster is really kind of raised. It's just going to kind of be up to him and what happens. They also have a couple guys on defense, though, that are really great pieces. Linebacker Jordan Hall, 3rd season on the team, going to be the heart of that Spartans defense, is kind of expected to take a big leap in 2025, too. Over the last 2 years, he's had 91 tackles, 4.5 sacks. Not bad numbers, but definitely numbers that he can build upon. But a guy that's high IQ, really strong leader, a physical presence, and could very likely finish as one of the Big Ten's top linebackers. A guy that's going to patrol that middle of the defense for Michigan State and really can be an impact defender. Malik Spencer, he's quickly become one of the most dependable guys in that secondary for Michigan State. Started every game last year at safety, returns to the defense as a leader, has valuable experience, and is really versatile. Is able to play free safety, plays nickel corner, and can even play boundary corner when he needs. And a great tackler, too, at the secondary. 117 tackles over the past 2 seasons, brings a kind of much-needed physical presence to the Spartans' defense, and heading into his 4th year with the Spartans, hoping to kind of help that group get back to a dominant level on defense. Then Jalen Thompson, junior defensive end, going to be a key contributor. He's kind of gained valuable experience over the past 2 years at Michigan State, but 6'3", brings good size, athleticism to that position, and started the Final Four games last year. He's going to be expected to really step into a major role this year and will be leaned on kind of heavily for the Spartans defense. His development at defensive end as a go-to rusher is really going to be a big spot for them on the front 7. Coaches have praised his work ethic, his quickness, and his development throughout the spring, but going to need to continue that and show it throughout the regular season. If those guys can kind of lock down each of their parts of the field, Michigan State's defense could get back to being really solid. But a lot's going to rest on who else is around them, and then on offense, it's going to be on Aiden Childs and what he can do to elevate Michigan State to the next level. So with that, we are going to end our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. If you want, please remember to subscribe, like, follow the channel. And if you want, you can also go to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter for even more sports content, more sports updates that you love. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to